So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for Insightful Accountants QB Talks webinar, Managing Projects Using QuickBooks Online. Thanks to our presenter, Liz Scott. Hey, Liz, for sharing her insights on QBO projects and apps. And of course, we do want to say thank you to our series sponsor, Rewind. Rewind Backups protects the critical data which runs your firm and your clients' businesses. Online accounting software products don't automatically save your transactions and files if they're accidentally deleted. Rewind Backups is the undo button for your online accounting software, automatically saving and restoring the latest version of your books. As of March 2022, Rewind Backups are available for QuickBooks Online, Shopify, Shopify Plus, GiftHub, Trello, Microsoft 365, and BigCommerce, with a dozen other platforms currently in beta. My information's a little old, so some of these other platforms might be already be available. So if you don't know Liz, Liz is the CEO of Accounting Lifeline, the co-host of the Happy Hour, Insightful Accountants QBO contributing editor, an Intuit Advanced Certified QuickBooks Online Pro Advisor, a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network, an international speaker and trainer, among other things. I do have a couple of housekeeping items, and that is this session does not offer CPE. If you think it should, let me know, and then we can work to get that added. If you have questions, please put them in the chat or the questions panel. The link on the recording will be sent to you afterwards, within 24 hours or so. And the slides, Liz, are we going to have the slides available? Of course, yes. She says, yes, the slides will be available. So we'll get those to you in the follow-up email as well. So before I turn it over to Liz, I do have a poll question. It's kind of a cheating calling it a poll question because it really is a one question with 4 parts. So just answer these real quickly. And so basically, like we just said, Rewind is our sponsor. And so Rewind wants to know, what accounting software are you using? Have you experienced any data loss? Do you have any security plans or protocols in place? And then, of course, you want to learn more about how they can help you secure your QBO data. And we'll give that, since there were pretty yes or no questions, we'll give that, I don't know, a good 30 seconds. And then we will turn this over to Liz. Maybe I'll ask Liz another silly question. Actually, it's not silly. When are you going to Scale New Heights? When you show up? Oh, you're muted.
I will be there Saturday, and I'm happy to say I'm going to first go to Harry Potter World.
Oh, all right. Nice.
Yep.
We're actually driving. My wife's going to be working our booth for us. So we're driving down on Friday. And so we're going to take a little time Friday. Everybody else gets in Saturday, and then we hit the ground running on Sunday. So
looking forward to seeing everybody.
Yeah, it would be nice to get back with a large group face to face. Although I did hear of some people who did pick up COVID coming back out of AICPA last week. So hopefully that stayed in Vegas. Hey, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? So hopefully that will stay out there. So
right, I agree.
All right, well, let me turn this over to you. I am going to go off screen, and Liz, it is all yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the nice introduction. And I took a moment to go off my screen share so that way I could put the slides inside of Zoom chat. So if you're looking for the slides, there's a PDF and you can follow along. You know, if you've joined some of my webinars, I really like going live and doing demos. So there will be some times whenever, instead of going slide by slide, I'm going live over into the product because I learn best that way. But it's also helpful to have slides to fall back on whenever we're not together. So let me go ahead and advance to my agenda here. So QuickBooks projects. I've been listening to some feedback from our community, and there's lots of people out there that are aware of QuickBooks Online projects, but just not using them. So I thought it would be nice to do a bit of a refresher course to talk about like maybe what is inside of projects that you're aware of, maybe haven't used, or that you're like, hey, that's cool. So I think one question I have is, you can just throw this in the chat, there's not a poll, but just how many of you are actually using projects? That's kind of an interesting question, just because it'll help me to know today, while we're going through the webinar, where might you want some additional information? And then we're going to go through the step-by-step, how do you set it up? And then how do you manage it? So what happens if you turn it on and you've got historical sub-customer or customer information? And so you want to be able to track those kinds of details. And then also, what all can you do with projects? So you can have a budget, you can pull reports, and there's lots of things that you can do with budgets. And we'll go through some of those pieces. I see some people saying, okay, so Linda's saying mostly using them for nonprofits. And then, yes, the slides are in the chat. So you should be able to see the slides in chat. Gary, I'm gonna wonder, are you able to confirm that the slides are in chat and visible to everyone?
Yes, I see it. You put it in at 2:06. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming. So with projects, it's this built-in module that's inside of QuickBooks that you can use. So it is part of a subscription. You do have to have, so I'm just going to go ahead and say this part first. You do have to have Plus or Advanced subscription in order to be able to have access to projects. And you can see down here, I wanted to grab a screenshot of really the features. Down at the bottom, whenever you subscribe to Plus, you can see project profitability. And then same thing with Advanced, you're going to be able to have the project profitability in there. So it's important to first start with being able to know that you're not going to see it inside of Simple Start or Essentials. You're going to have to move over into Plus or Advanced. If you see projects on your navigation bar, then that means that you're in the right subscription level. And if you are somebody who wants to use it, there's a couple of steps that if you're in an older subscription, sometimes you have to go in and turn it on. Some of the newer subscriptions, I've noticed that it's just already on. So if you're wondering why you don't see it, it's possible that you need to go through the steps to set it up. So we'll go through that here in a minute too. But for the most part, the reason that projects are important is it's being able to take your profit and loss and dive deeper into a specific job or customer, and you want to be able to track the profitability. I think about this as being something where you might want to be able to see all of the income that's came in by project or customer. You want to be able to see even payroll that's being tracked, all of your costs, any type of, for us, we sometimes have subscription costs that go along with a particular client. So you want to be able to even track on a subscription level, what all are you paying for? With a lot of the clients that I work with, especially if they're doing some type of reoccurring type work, then they want to be able to track month by month, how profitable is that reoccurring work? Or they want to be able to say, this is a one-time job. I work with some franchises and they're job-based. They may have some repeat work, but really for them, what they're trying to determine is, did they set the price correctly for a particular type of job? So whenever that type of work comes in again, they're able to see when the crew arrived, because they actually, have some field service that's part of it. Did the crew, were they able to figure out efficiently what needed to be done? Were they able to purchase materials? And did it stay inside of the budget? Otherwise, if they're not tracking the labor and they're only tracking materials, you're only seeing part of the profitability for a job. So I try to encourage, I know it's an extra step, but I try to encourage people that if you've got payroll, that is one of the most expensive pieces inside of any industry. So for me, it doesn't really matter if we're talking about construction or if we're talking about our industry and we're doing bookkeeping or tax, or, maybe you're doing integrations or training, whatever it is that, even us that we're doing, projects are really nice to be able to have visibility into how are you doing? You're going to laugh, but sometimes I call them You can only have so many pet clients, and those pet clients are the ones that you're not really making money on. You're doing it out of the kindness of your heart because you really care about them. But it's important to know, even on that level, if you're going to break even on a particular client, you certainly don't want to be losing money on client over client. So yes, you can track by Excel. The only thing is it can be time consuming to set up. There are some of you out there who are going to set up Excel. You're going to have some formatting. You're going to be able to dump in the detail month over month. But for the rest of us out there, it's just nice to be able to go and look and have clear visibility into one particular screenshot to be able to see client A, B, and C. Here's how you're doing. And the project screen has a really nice dashboard that we're going to look at. And with our dashboards, we're able to see all of these things right here. So how are we doing? What's our profit? What is even our percentage of profit? And then did we get our estimates right? Did we, I'm going to come back to our industry because I love it. And that's one of the areas that we all know. But for a client who this time of year, we get clients that come to us and they say, maybe they've not engaged with training and they're seeing that their bookkeepers may be struggling internally. So they reach out and they want to have some help with training. Well, training can be ever ending. And so you can go on forever to be able to say, maybe you had a 90-day support engagement, but outside of that 90 days, you're still working on that client. You need to be able to say, where's our cutoff of this engagement? So here's where I'm going to go ahead and say, what's the difference between projects and customers versus sub-customers? And in the reality, there's nothing different. So that's why we're going to go through and look at, you can take a customer who has a sub-customer, you do need to have a sub-customer, and then you can convert it over into a project. So there's not a difference there as far as like being able to distinguish, are we saying that a project has to meet this criteria? No, it just is somebody who you're tracking, and you might have been tracking on a sub-customer basis. So all of the job expenses that you go through are on a sub-customer basis. But what really boils down to is the type of reports. How is it that you're able to pull reports? And I've got a screenshot here where we're able to see we've got Fairfield complex. So if we're thinking about, let's just say Fairfield is an apartment complex and there's a crew that's out doing work on the Fairfield complex. We've got building A1, who's a sub-customer. So we're going to have to pull reports differently for the sub-customer than we would for our project level. And the way that it would look for a sub-customer is to come over and you would pull your profit and loss by customer, and then next you would need to filter it down to be able to see the details of the customer and then get into that sub-customer visibility. My issue with that is, and let's just go ahead and look at it, is here I've got a demo company that we're in right now. And if I go over into reports, let me just come back. Let me back up and let's just go over into our customers for a second, because I want to show you what the structure is. And if I am looking at Fairfield, I showed a screenshot earlier of Fairfield complex, apartment complex has got building A1 that is a sub-customer. So the sub-customer is going to live inside of the customer center. You can see our other buildings for the Fairfax apartment complex is not inside, it's not located inside of our customer center anymore. Instead, it truly is over inside of our project area. So you can see building A, B, C, they are projects of our Fairfield apartment complex. And that's one of the biggest differences, is where do you locate them? And then how do you pull reports based off of these two different ways to be able to look at essentially the same information. So if we're thinking about pulling reports for a sub-customer, a profit and loss by customer would be a really good place to start. Let me move our faces over for a second. And you can see here all of the various customers that you've ever worked on. This is why it can get really messy if you're pulling a project and loss by customer, but you can come over and customize it. I'm going to say when you're tracking projects, they cross years, so all date is important. The next piece is to come over and filter your information. So you're going to filter it to your customers, and then you're going to hand pick the customers that you want to report on. We want to be able to report on our customers, and we can, because QuickBooks is still treating and it recognizes that projects are still sub-customers in the back ends of QuickBooks. We can still pull a report that says we've got building A, and we're able to recognize the income and the expenses. What I dislike about pulling customer reports inside of QuickBooks that are sub-customers is I've got my multiple columns, and there's really no way to be able to avoid that. So you've got your parent customer, you've got your sub-customer, and then they have the total, and then you have total again. What I do, if you're somebody who really does like to use the sub-customer format, what I do for my clients is I'll come over here and I put the steps to the directions on how to go and filter this report. And I'll remind them that they need to go over into customize. And so I'll pull in customize, and then I'll say next is filter. And then next I'll say to the customer that you're wanting to pull the report for. So now their title actually has the steps to how to pull that report, and then I go ahead and I save this. So that's one of the things I do. If I have a client who really does like using sub-customers and they're going to continue to, this is what I do is I'll save this, and then I'll share this with, you know, all members of the team, so that way they've got that report that they can go back to later and pull and be able to say, how did I do it? And they can see that they've got all of the steps that are visible. There it is, with the instructions built in. But I like projects. If you've got people who are really digging in deep and they're wanting to see visibility, this is where I bring them. Is this dashboard allows them to be able to see at a glance, what's their profit margin? How are they doing to date? How much income have they spent? What are the costs? So they're able to see their expenses. And we haven't even dug in yet to be able to see what are the related costs that are associated with making up the expense pieces. So we're going to dig into here, but I first want to show you, how do you get over into making sure that you've got projects turned on? So you can come over into your accountant settings, and you can make sure that you've got projects on. Here it is. If you don't have it on, you can turn it on. If you want to turn it off, you can certainly turn it off too, and it'll remove it from your navigation over here. So that's one thing to know. The other is turning a sub-customer into a project. That would be the second piece. So I've had lots of customers clients who have came to me and they said, all right, I want to be able to use projects. Do I have to set it up from scratch? And the cool thing is no, you can actually go over into our customer center and say that we've got a customer that has some history with us, and it does need to be a sub-customer. And if I've got one here, okay, this is a good one. So I've got a customer, Broadway Street Communications, and I can see my indentation here means that this is a sub-customer. I could go over and even verify that here I've got a sub-customer named Broad Street Communications Phase 4. So this would be a great example of someone who we can convert over into a project. So if we wanted to convert this 125 over into a project, we could convert them over. The project then would be listed over here inside of our projects, and we can do a new project name. We can come over here and we can say, all right, here's our amount. Avery, let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and convert them. This is one of the things that you want to pay attention to. Is it not started? Is it in progress? Is it completed? And so we're going to go ahead and say yes, that it's in progress. And now we've converted this sub customer over. If we went over to go look for, here they are right there. If we went to go over and see this sub customer, they would no longer live inside of our customer center. The other thing that you might want to do is, if you are somebody who has been moving along with a particular customer and you're wanting to say, I'd like to go back and now change this into a sub customer to be able to say all of the income and the expenses are tracked by that sub customer. There's several steps that you can take in order to be able to make sure that all of the tracking for that project is listed. I'm going to pull up the slides so that way you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Let me share my screen and advance a couple over to our setup. And we want to look at, here's our setup for our customers, and then being able to migrate maybe an invoice that was previously posted to a customer and you want to post it to a sub customer, or an expense. Either way, you can go in and you can edit that transaction. My call out here is, if you're somebody who wants to go in and put the sub customer in, you're going to possibly lose the tie-in to the payment for that history. So you want to go in and make sure that not only do you change the invoice, but you want to make sure that you're pulling in the payment for that project as well. And what I mean by that, let's just do one. What I mean by that is, let's say that we've got a customer who we're going to go ahead and create an invoice for. And let's say let's do 125, which is Broadway. This is where we would want to pull in and create an invoice on this level for the sub customer. But what if we just had it on the customer level? And we came over here and we had services, $500, save. I'm not going to worry about my classes at this point. And then over here, I would say save. But what if I wanted to go back and now change it to the sub customer level? I would need to go over to that original invoice and I need to pull in the sub customer. And whenever we do this, when we say save, it's going to tell us that we sometimes, okay, great. So that one did it automatically, but sometimes you're going to get an error where it's going to say it didn't attach correctly. Let's go ahead and just, I'm going to force us to have an issue. So I just went ahead and pulled in Brian. And if I say save, here I'm going to lose my received payment. So I no longer have my received payment there. And I would need to go back over into my received payment to make sure that the received payment also matches. So say you change that, and do you have your payment here that you want to match up? So that's one of those little things I just want to call out, that if you do make some changes in the structure of your customers and sub customers before you convert over, you may have some of these little pieces that just to be aware of. So if you've got somebody who says, I want to be able to start using sub customers and convert them over into projects, that's just one of those little nuggets of here's some little tidbits to be aware of. And so we can say save and close here. With I'm looking at some of the questions. So can you address tracking receivables by project? So I wonder, Jonathan, what do you have exactly in mind? Because I think that you're maybe talking more specific than just an invoice. I'm not really sure, but knowing you've got something in particular in mind. So yeah, I'm happy to go through that. These slides are just going to show you the exact same thing. So over here, if we wanted to create an invoice for a project, let's go ahead and look to see how to do that. If I come over inside of my project center, so let's make sure that we're aware that we're in our projects dashboard. Over here, because we have been used to creating sometimes transactions in the customer center, here we're in the project center, so we can still have our project visibility, and we can see over here, add to project. One of the nice things that it's easy to train clients on is if you convert sub customers over into projects and you get your clients used to working in the project center, then they're going to come over inside of the project, and the majority of the time they'll create transactions inside the project. That's nice because it auto fills in your customer information, and then you can go through and you can put in whatever it is that you've got. And I'm just picking on services again. You can put in your class if you've got a class, and you can save right here. Let's go back out. And then we just added a new transaction. So if I'm looking at our transaction history, it pulled in that invoice. But we are looking at building A. Same thing is still true. You can still do the quick create. You can go up to our building A, and we can still be in our Fairfax complex. We can still add in whatever it is that we're doing, retainer consulting. Let's just put in a ridiculous amount there. And then we can save close. And we're going to see the invoice populated. So it doesn't really matter which way you create the transaction inside the project or just by going up to your quick create, as long as you're tagging that project, which looks like the sub customer, as long as you're tagging it, the activity, the transactions are going to live inside of that project. Same thing is true for expenses. So if you wanted to go over and you wanted to track your expenses, we can just say any, I don't know if I've got Home Depot in here, but let's see, I don't. Let's see what, oh, CU Electric. Let's pick on CU Electric. And then what we did was we bought maybe some materials. And so let's pull in our materials. Let's give it a wicked amount. And then all we need to do here is pull in our project, which you can see it's customer/project, and then we can save close. That's going to allow us to come back over to our transaction list, and we can see that activity. So it doesn't really matter if you create the transaction inside of projects or if you create it in the plus new. It's going to land in the project as long as you tag it in your customer, sub-customer project field. And they can do it by sub-customer. Okay, so Jonathan, I was just reading your note here. So they're considering projects, but need to be able to see AR by project. So being able to pull an AR summary report, you can still pull that by project. Let's go explore some of our options. So let's just say AR aging, but we want to narrow it down. Here's our building A. So we can still see that invoice that we created. It's visible here. And you can see it's QuickBooks treats customers, sub-customers, and projects interchangeably. If you wanted to come over and again filter down onto your report to say, let's specify, I only want to pull in, oh, you have to type in the parent, and I always I always get ahead of myself there. So Fairfax, building A, and here we go. And we filtered down to it. Does that, Jonathan, does that answer that question? Hopefully so. Oh, well, yay. So Jonathan's saying that he didn't see that in his test, but I'm glad that we worked through that one. Let me come back over to the slides for a minute because I want to make sure that we are going through. So the existing, making sure that you're seeing one of the things that you can turn off if you want to turn off the automation that you are automatically applying credits because of those unpaid invoices where we were talking about you breaking the link if you're tagging in a different customer because you're creating, sometimes you're going, before you convert, you're going to have to do a little bit of cleanup to make sure that you're going to convert over smoothly because you can't convert a customer over into a project. It really has to be that sub customer. So if you've got the sub customer level and by creating that you accidentally broke some of your links, you may want to turn off this automation so that way you don't have credits that try to automatically apply to the next open invoice, for example. So that's just one of those little nuggets of learn through my mistakes. And then you go through here and you can tag in that invoice. And then you're able to see that you had that open invoice, but you were able to close it with that payment. I really like pulling in all of the expenses, which includes payroll. So the next piece that I want to dive into for projects is talking about the piece that I see often missing, which is where the majority of the expenses are for a particular client, and that's in the labor. So there's 3 different ways to be able to track time in QuickBooks. One, you're able to do it without payroll, and the others are you have a payroll subscription. And in the third example, we're talking about with QuickBooks Time, and you need to be able to have premium or elite subscription to payroll in order to be able to have access to QuickBooks Time. So let me say that again, without payroll, you actually can track time. Now we're going to look at what that looks like if you don't use payroll. So what access do you have to be able to have visibility into expenses? What does it look like if you're somebody who's tracking time with payroll turned on? So you're putting in time entries and then you also are processing payroll. You're going to have even more visibility than somebody who is only entering timesheets without payroll. And then lastly, if you're somebody who has a premium or elite payroll subscription, you have QuickBooks Time included. So I want to go through what do those different scenarios look like, because for being able to see clear visibility into projects, you want all of those. You want to know what all of your access is. So this is an example of somebody who does not have payroll. You're able to enter a time entry, one time entry at a time. And so in this example, we're pulling in Paul as the worker, and then we can say Paul was working on whatever particular customer project. And then the next thing that we can do is we can see with payroll, we have a timesheet. Instead of having a single time entry, entering one time activity at a time, now we have a sheet that opens up and we're able to put in time entries by day and by project or customer and by what kind of pay item are they. Is it something that you're going to map? Because we've got lots of mapping options with payroll. So are you going to map your payroll items in here? Are you going to make them billable? If so, do you need to have a billable rate? The last one is looking at payroll with a premium or elite subscription and being able to tag in QuickBooks Time. Same thing here. We're going to have visibility into all of our time activities, but we've got access to QuickBooks Time. I'm going to go ahead and show you live what I mean by these various different options. So let's just start back over here on our dashboard. We're in our sample company, Rock Castle. If we come up to this plus new, what we have is a single time activity option. And this is what I was saying. If you're somebody who has a client that they do not have payroll subscriptions, but they do want to be able to pull in, let's just say this is $100 per hour. They do want to be able to track time activities, but they don't have payrolls. Here is one of the options. So we can go ahead and say save close. And I keep getting that flash that I'm not doing classes, but for our purposes, it doesn't matter. Okay, so this is for somebody who does not have payroll. How can you go back and see the time activities? You got two options here. One, you can see time activities by customer. The other one is time activities by employee. I think the most valuable in this case is time activities by employee. And then here we would be able to see, we just entered some time for Paul Mathis. We said that it was a rate of $100 and there was a duration of 5 hours. And so the total amount is the $500. What this means is we would be able to go and see visibility into Paul Mathis here. Now, in order to be able to see full reporting abilities for payroll, we need to be able to process payroll in QuickBooks. And what I mean by that is we just pulled a time activities report, but because we did not actually process Paul's time inside of QuickBooks, all we did was just enter a time activity, but we didn't process his payroll. There's not going to be a posting to the general ledger to be able to say this $500 in reality was an expense. So in order to be able to have a GL posting, you need to be able to go inside and enter time. So we're going to now say that we're in an example where we've got Paul Matthews and we're looking at his time activity for this week. We can see what customer was he working on. We can even add as many lines as we need to. So we could drop down and we could add some lines saying that he was working on our, and he's going to be a terrible example because I've already processed his payroll. So let's pull in a different worker. Let's do Greg. So with Greg, we're going to say that Greg is working on our building that we keep tagging building A. And he's got some regular pay wages. And because we're wanting to just kind of cheat and make some simple entries here, we can come over and we can say, here is his time activity. We could have split it however many times that we needed to split it. We could certainly have done that. But now if we go over to process payroll and we go to payroll for did I get signed out? It looks like I'm signed out. Is what's happening here. Okay. All right. So if we go to process payroll, we would be able to see the time activities for our employee that we just added his time. We gave him 40 hours. Here's the 40 hours that's pulling in from his timesheets. And then we could process his payroll. And because we put in that he had the time activities that were associated with different jobs, when we go over to our projects, we would be able to see over inside of our projects the costs for payroll right here. So if we're over inside of a project and we're looking at building A, we've gone through, entered a timesheet, we tagged our customer, we put in however many hours. Then over here, we're able to see this is where payroll was processed. We're able to see all of our wages, and we're even actually able to see the taxes. So this is one way to be able to process time and track it by customer or project. The other is if you're in one of the premium or elite subscriptions, then you can come over and launch QuickBooks Time directly from QuickBooks. We can say, let's do a time entry. And over here, we would be able to say, who do we want to enter time for? Let's just pick on Greg. And then we could tag in our customer. And those of you who are familiar with QuickBooks Time, you would know that you would probably most likely do this on the app. So we could put in however many hours that we wanted to add, and then be able to save all of this activity, go through, and probably you would have the worker themselves while out in the field enter their time. And then once that time was added, then you could go through and you could do an approval, and you could look at hours for that worker for the week, and you could see what was the job breakdown. So we're looking at Paul again. So what did he work on? The hours have been approved. And so based on what he was working on, we would be able to see that activity inside of QuickBooks. It would pull up on a report, because now we have taken that time, we've gone over into payroll, and for Paul, we actually processed his payroll with those time activities on it. And that's what allows us to be able to come back over into projects and see the expenses that are posted by job. The other option that you have is sometimes people say, but you haven't captured all of my expenses for payroll that are associated with that employee. And you're wanting to not only track the payroll expenses for that employee, but you're also wanting to track, are there health benefits? Are there other pieces of maybe you're doing 401k and you want to pull that in, or maybe you're wanting to say, there's additional taxes that aren't being calculated. And so you want to pull in the costs that are associated with that employee. One of the things that you can do on a per employee basis is come over back to your dashboard for projects. And here's my dashboard. You can enter an hourly cost rate. What this allows us to do is, let's set it up for Greg. What this allows us to do is to add in additional expenses. So we can say our wages for this employee are $14.42. We've got our standard employer tax rate. We could change that if we wanted to, but then we could also put in some overhead. We know this employee had admin time where they were driving back and forth, or maybe they were inside of the office, and we know that there's always going to be this cost associated with it. So we can estimate, and we can say that we've got a dollar value that we want to be able to put in here. Let's just add an additional dollar for overhead. Now we just changed his rate, and we're going to go ahead and save that. And what that allows us to see is have transparency into, not only are we able to see visibility into payroll by employee per job, but we can also flip over here. I think this is pretty cool. We can flip over here and we can see our hourly cost. This is a toggle. You don't have to look at this option, but it's really beneficial to be able to say, I've got George, my worker, and I've entered in his hourly cost rate, and then had some expenses that were posted. And then I can see here, what's my total rate. And I can pull off of my sales activities, which are actually tied to, these are tied to time activities. So I just kind of want to point out there's these differences here. One is based off of processing payroll, and the other one is based off of these time activities and the cost associated with them. So there's two different ways to be able to pull in the reports. The thing that you do not see is you do not see our brand new rate that we just added for our worker, Greg. And the reason is when you come over into your cost and you're adding in additional cost for a particular worker, that cost will not retroactively post. It will in the future, all additional transactions that are payroll related, time related for that worker, it's going to be able to add in those additional cost rates that you've created moving forward. So you'll see those here. I'm gonna look to see, do we have questions right now? Because I know projects are really, really cool, but you can go in pretty deep with the level of transparency for all of the expenses. So I'm looking, Leslie, you've got some questions here. Is there a way to see payroll history? You've got, you track payroll time for costs, but it's not billable. You don't have to make it billable. Whenever I'm going through and I'm entering time, if it's somebody that, you know, we go back to how are you pricing? So if it's somebody that's being priced on a project level and you're not creating an invoice based off of every single transaction expense, I just turn off the billable piece. You still have, so the answer to what you were asking is, you still have visibility into reports because you tagged in that customer. What this billable does is this just posts it where it this time is then available for you to invoice off of. But not everybody wants to be able to have this option. So if I made this billable, save close, we're going to go into building A. The difference in what we just did, oh, and it looks like I'm blocked there. It's not saving or closing. It's not saving or closing. It may be cancel. I don't know if I am really locked up right here. Hold on, I'm gonna refresh. Sorry, guys. There we go. Let's make it billable. Let's just say save close. If I went over to create an invoice, now I would be able to have visibility for our building A, and I would have my drawer that pops up. And so, you know, any time that had been added, I would be able to see that right here. And that's what I would be able to add onto this transaction. I like grouping time by service type. And so that's the way that I add them in instead of individual activities. I think it kind of gets messy if it's individual activities. But if you group them, then you get clumps of time that are associated. And you can always go back to these links and you can look to see what was part of those time activities. I'm going to not save that. We'll look at another question here. Why can't you add a sales receipt to a project? Well, I haven't had that experience. So here I'm in a sales receipt and I'm able to come over here and let's just tag in. I thought I had labor in here, but whatever, let's tag design. I'm able to tag my customer and save close. 135 is what I just created. And if I go back over into my projects and I look at building A and I look at my sales, and here's my transactions, here's my sales receipt for the 135 I just created. So if you've got some type of different experience, there might be something in your settings that's weird, because you should be able to create a sales receipt that's tied to a project and have visibility. But isn't this cool how you can go into the digging into the expenses and have at your fingertips, what is it that you're wanting to dive into. So I've got my income here minus my cost, and I can see my total profit. That's one way at a glance to be able to look at the activity. The transactions, we were diving into this a minute ago because we wanted to go and look to see, we had created our invoices and our time charges and our expenses. We can look by time activity. This is also another way to be able to have granular detail into what made up those different time activities. There's still hyperlinks, so you can dive into them further. And then you've got your project reports. So project reports, for me, this is one of the biggest time saves. Earlier, we were going over and we were doing the filtering to a sub-customer. Here, there's no filtering. And remember how we had our multiple rows and it was really kind of messy? We had our parent customer, and then we had our sub-customer, and then we had a total, and then we had a grand total. Here's just pulling in that one project, and it's giving you visibility into that one project. How are you performing? There's no filtering. There's no instructions that you have to post for your clients. You're just able to go over into the project center and pull that report. I do want to make sure, let me look at the other thing that I wanted to go ahead and cover today is budgets. So those of you who really want to be able to make sure that a project is staying on track, you can create a budget by project. So here's my example right here where I've got my budget that I built for our specific project, and I'm able to see what did I want it to be like, and then I can pull in my report to be able to see my budget versus actual. And it's pretty easy to come over and create our budget. So let's just go ahead and call this building A, and then I'm just going to put a 1 here because I want to get into our where we have data and not duplicate the other one. So what I did is I said by customer, and then over here, I'm going to tag in that building. Oh, and I have to tag in Fairfield Complex Building A. So I said I want to pre-fill the data from 2021, and here it's going to start building that data for me. So it pulled in the history, and then any of these values that I want to override, I can say create the budget, and then I can start overriding any of these fields. If I wanted to say, for example, my materials really need to be spread out over our various months, I could put in values by each month, or I can just say, copy that over, and I can now save. I want to come over here and just show you what that budget versus actual report looks like. So because this is working off of a customer level, you are going to have to come over and do the filtering for the budget. But I just want you to see that you have that visibility here. How are you performing? What did you expect to have happen? And then you're able to track it over a period of time. I'm going to go over to the slides, and I'm going to make sure that all of you know that you've got access to the slides that I went through, and I really talked through all of our slides, but they're here, which is why I put them inside of our Zoom chat, as I wanted you to be able to refer to it later, because I know this is kind of a lot to go through, but if you're going to use projects, there's a whole lot of capabilities there. And I think it's really valuable to be able to see step by step, how do you create these budgets? How do you make sure that you've got visibility into your one of your biggest expenses, which is payroll? I want to call out this screen right here, and my call out is projects is a feature that is inside of QuickBooks Online. Not every single app that you use is going to have access into projects. There are going to be some solutions out there that I've ran into that what you're able to do is you're able to use, just like in QuickBooks, the customer, sub-customer, project fields interchangeably. And that works great. There's going to be other solutions out there that don't yet tie to projects. So on an individual basis, I would check to see what is it that your solution allows you to do. Can you tie back to your customers? We're at the point right now where I want to make sure that if there's any questions that I haven't answered, I want to be able to allow a couple of minutes for answering some questions. And you're welcome. And yes, I'm going to see all of you who are going to be at Scaling New Heights with me. I'm going to see you very soon. I'm very excited about that. I can't wait. So Leslie, I think that you had several questions over here. Did I get them all answered? Hopefully so, as I was going through the different areas. And then Anonymous, you were saying that your clients don't have payroll subscriptions, but they are going to have access to those single time entries. They are not going to see the weekly timesheets. Weekly timesheets is a payroll subscription feature. So hopefully that answers that question. Gary, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you. That was some great information. Makes my head explode, but clearly you spend much more time in there than I do. So we certainly appreciate it. And we do look forward to seeing you next week, as well as everybody else that will be at Scaling New Heights in Orlando. Make sure you stop by our booth. Now, what about you, Liz? Will they just see you roam in the halls? You said you have one class, is what you shared with me before.
I am digging my schedule for Scaling New Heights this year. I really wanted to spend time with my peers, and I made the decision that I wasn't going to teach a lot. So I'm only teaching one class, and I'm co-presenting. And it's a class where we're talking about, I migrated my firm over from Google to Microsoft, and I wanted to share my experience. What were some of the cool things that happened? What's some of the, hey, nice to know? So you can, again, learn from some of my mistakes. And then to be able to this rest of the time mingle. So make sure if you're there to say hi. I'm going to be out in the hallways just hanging out with everyone.
Awesome. Yep. And then we'll be Insightful Accountant. Our booth is 148. Swing by and see us there as well. We are giving away a Remarkable 2, which I don't really even know anything about it. Esther just wrote an article about it that will be posted, I think, tomorrow. So apparently it kind of feels like paper and can take your handwriting, turn it into text. And
those are pricey. I want one.
Yeah, it's funny when you first you look at it, it's like, oh, it's $300. That's not bad. Well, then plus another $129 for the pen, and then another, $100 and something for the sleeve. So sorry if you win it. I didn't buy the sleeve, so I'm in for like $450 in for this thing. So better be a cool tool.
It is very cool.
Yeah, I'm going to launch one more. Just if you change your mind and you would like to hear from Rewind, just say yes. If not, just say not at this time. Swing by and see us, booth 148 at Scaling New Heights. We look forward to seeing everyone next week, or if you're not there, see you on the next QB Talks. Thanks, Liz. Safe travels, everyone, and we will see y'all in Orlando. Bye-bye.